Welcome to But Enough About Me, a podcast about other people. My name is Tyler Andrews. I'm a Nashville-based photographer, husband, and father. I'm trying to collect the stories of everyone around me, whether we're best friends or total strangers. I want to know what made you the person you are today. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. If this is your first time listening, you've picked a winner. If this isn't your first time listening, then brace yourself. This is going to be a good one. My name is Tyler Andrews. This is the podcast, But Enough About Me. We listen to people's stories and try to find the common threads that unite all of us, the experiences that we all have. But the big unstated reason that I started this podcast is because I am not a naturally compassionate person. Left to my own devices, honestly, I'm a bit of a jerk. And it got bad enough that at one point I finally decided I had to do something. I was also looking for content to start a podcast, for an excuse to exercise this portion of my brain, and the two things met up nicely, and I decided that this would be perfect. I can share other people's stories, build up some compassion within myself, and have something to record for fun. Well, today's episode, editing it, listening to it over and over again, I can 100% confirm that if the goal was to build up compassion within myself, I have been successful. Today's episode is extremely emotional. I don't think that if you have a soul, you will listen to this episode and not be moved by it. If you are someone given to crying, seriously, it's probably going to happen, especially if you're paying attention, and you need to pay attention. You need to hear what this man has to say. We all do. Guys, you're going to be so glad you listened to this. My guest today is someone I met through a mutual friend, somebody who was actually my very first interview for the podcast, but I didn't release it because I didn't know what I was doing, and it sounds awful. Maybe someday we'll release it, and you guys can have fun listening to just how bad I was at one point in time. Not that I'm great now. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, Andrew Morton, a wonderful photographer, somebody who deserves your attention, especially if you're getting married. Check him out. Go see Andrew Morton's work. Andrew is a good friend of mine and has been listening to the show and enjoying it, and he said, dude, you've got to talk to my friend Eric. I'm so glad he did. The resume is going to sound familiar. Eric is a Nashville-based photographer, father, and husband. He's had 3 kids, and you need to take the time to go see his work. Not just his professional work, though that's excellent, but as you're listening to the podcast, go check out disproportionatejoy.com. It's the website where he chronicles life with his family and specifically his youngest daughter, Pearl Joy Brown. That said, this is not her story. This is Eric's story. And guys, I cannot wait for you to hear it and learn from him the way I have. So, without any more hesitation, ladies and gentlemen, my new friend, Eric Brown. I'm gonna put this.
I used to have a whole studio, not a whole home studio.
Did you?
Yeah, I thought I was a musician at one point. Made a record.
Did you really?
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Totally independent, and hope no one ever finds it.
Oh, so you don't want me pimping it on the show?
No.
Oh.
As far as everyone in town knows, I am not a musician.
What?
I really liked the record, but I'll admit that it was awful, but I still liked it.
Having the self-awareness to admit that it's awful is pretty dramatic, especially in this town.
True.
When were you born?
March 24th, 1981.
1981.
Yes, sir. In Raleigh, North Carolina.
Is that why you have the tattoo?
I do. That is I-95 and Highway 64.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, my hometown is right there where they meet.
That's awesome. Tell me about your folks.
Wow. Family of 6 grown up. Mom and dad stayed faithful to each other. My dad passed away when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was super healthy marriage, and they modeled that for us. And Christian home.
Where are you in the birth order?
Um, there's one younger than me.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then my sister is the oldest of the four.
What's the age range between your oldest sister and the one younger?
Is give or take 2 years
Okay.
for each one. There's probably some variance in there. I could have told you the real answer, 25 years ago, but at this point, yeah, I don't track.
No. It makes. But that's what I'm getting at is how far apart is everybody, and so not very.
Not very far apart, and they're all still back in that area.
That's cool.
Yeah, my sister had left, but she's come back, and I've left, and a big picture plan, I'd still like to find my way back to North Carolina. But
so you said your folks had a great marriage. What did your dad do? What did your mom do? How'd they meet?
Mom was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
And my dad, corporate job. I don't know how they met. That's awful. By the time you start caring about that stuff, he was gone.
Yeah.
And so we just don't sit around and have those conversations that we would have had if he was still here. So yeah, I don't know much about most of that stuff.
What do you remember about being young with him around? Because 16, you've got plenty of memories of Dad.
Sure, but I was also I was an awful kid.
What?
Yes, I was an awful kid, and have lots of memories of discipline that I certainly deserved.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I wasn't the kid who... I didn't follow my dad out to the wood shop to learn what he was doing in his spare time, and I didn't help fix the lawnmower with him. Like, I was off playing music, you know, and completely disinterested. And he was gone before I realized how much I had missed out on by not doing those things.
What were you like in elementary school? Still, you were a troublemaker even then?
In elementary school, they tell me I was a sweet kid. I was never, and this is still the case, I had 1,000 different groups of friends, but none of group that I fit in perfectly. I could kind of bounce around to any group, but I wasn't an integral part of any particular group. That has its advantages and disadvantages, but it was a good childhood, man. Yeah, I was in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Section of Rocky Mountains called Dorches. They would tell you it's not a section, but a separate entity. Right through the heart of Dorches runs Browntown Road.
Okay.
And
Browntown Road?
Browntown Road. And
that's
it is
the best name ever.
Miles of aunts and uncles and grandparents and great-grandparents and cousins.
Wow.
Yeah, so you spend any break you had from school, whether it was over Christmas break or summer break or whatever, get up in the morning, heading out, and it didn't really matter where you went. You were always on family property and amongst family and, fishing and hunting and wasting time and, building forts in the woods, all that kind of stuff. It was a great childhood.
So you loved being outdoors?
Yeah. Yeah. We weren't very good fishermen or hunters, but yeah, we did it.
Well, that comes with time.
Yeah.
How were you as a student?
I've always been a fairly smart guy. But in some ways that's been a strength, in some ways has been a weakness. And so in school, I'd finish my work before everyone else, but wasn't smart enough to know to utilize my other time better. So yeah, that's where it would be one strength and one would be a weakness. Because, yeah, I'm still a pretty smart guy, but I'm not smart enough in certain areas to know how to do all the other stuff well.
You said that's elementary school. Mm-hmm. When did you find music?
In elementary school.
Yeah?
Yep.
How'd that happen?
My dad, he cut my teeth on Bob Dylan and the Traveling Wilburys and the Byrds and the Beatles and Clapton. And then eventually the the tables started turning. So I was like, well, here's Neil Young. I don't know if you know about this, so let's check this out together. And then here's Tom Petty Wildflowers, which you couldn't have grown up with that. It just came out, but let's dive in together. And we did. And yeah, I was always raiding the tape box in his truck and taking the tapes back to my room, or his record collection growing up. It was, yeah, I was loving it, and I was absorbing it when the Arlo Guthrie show would come on PBS, and my dad's taping it with the VHS so you can go back and listen to it later. I didn't realize that this stuff was changing me and growing me and all that, but it was, yeah, it just fostered this huge love for music.
When did you discover you wanted to play it?
You know, it was in elementary school. And my mom had asked, did I want a guitar for my birthday? And I said, sure. And so they went out and, you know, they get the best. I think the brand name was Carlos. It was a pawn shop acoustic. They get the best one they could find. And then like 2 weeks before my birthday, I say, you know, I think I'd rather have a bicycle instead. Let's do the bicycle thing. And she said, well, we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Got the guitar for my birthday and loved it. Loved it.
Do you still have it?
No. Yeah, my first several guitars have disappeared into the ether, and I have no idea where they've landed.
Really? They just disappeared? It wasn't like you sold them or something?
Sold them, gave them away, loaned them out. I don't know where.
Wow.
I mean, none of them were. They weren't the kind of guitars you pass down for generations.
Okay.
Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Those did come back. That's a whole different story. Yeah. And so
you started playing in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Your hands probably weren't big enough to hold a guitar at that point.
No, I remember F chord was so hard.
F chord is still hard.
F chord is still hard. True. But they got me lessons and were super diligent. And yeah, anything that I wanted to do with music, my mom and my dad both bent over backwards to facilitate me doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So into middle school then, did music just take over and you just had no interests other than that?
Correct. Yeah, it did. I have never been a sports ball guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how to watch. Even as a photographer, if you said, Eric, I've got you, you know, on the sidelines for the Titans for the Super Bowl, go take whatever photos you want.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to take. I don't know what is happening out here. I don't know what's important that I need to take a picture of.
Right.
Totally clueless about all things sports. But yeah, started playing with other friends. Of course, you know how it goes here in the South. Everybody, youth group, church, praise band.
Yep.
You know, everybody's kind of got the same story in that world. And I was certainly that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great.
Did you form any bands other than the church band?
Of course, yeah. We all had the high school things. And in fact, Rocky Mount really had a thriving, like, young music scene where in high school, I remember friends they'd rent out storage units and they'd have a big punk show. And it was great. You know, you'd go to that stuff or you'd go do the church thing. I was never into the punk music scene. I was always defaulting more towards the Americana, singer-songwriter, that sort of thing.
When did you start writing music?
In college.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And it was never. It was never good. I love it, and it was awful.
You have enough taste to know that that's not your calling?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I didn't. It took me observing everyone else's response to my music to realize this is not my calling.
That's. I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
That's not what you're doing with your life. You're
right.
You're on stable footing.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's a big part of growing up.
Yeah, and music is still a huge part of life.
Right. Yeah.
my son's taken to music, and he's got some of my old guitars, and yeah, I introduced Tom Petty Wildflowers to him and Traveling Wilburys, and one day I walked in and he's playing Traveling Wilburys on the guitar, and I knew all would be well.
That's right.
Yeah.
So middle school sounds like it was fairly uneventful.
Uh-huh.
Were you a troublemaker?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Like what? What'd you do?
I mean, just antagonizing my teachers. Again, I was smart, and so I could create clever ways just to be a jerk, and do it in such a way that you couldn't really pin anything on me. You know, I knew I was antagonizing, and I knew that I had done it in such a way that what did I do that you're gonna turn me in for?
Right.
Like, this is not an impeachable offense. But I knew what I was doing. Yeah. I was same through high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just I was the jerk wearing the Christian t-shirts and treating everybody horribly and getting a laugh at everyone else's expense. And yeah. Like, I would slap me. If I could go back in time, I'd be like, you know what, you're a real Weisenheimer, and I'm gonna take you down a notch.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Tell me about relationships. Girls.
I had a high school girlfriend.
But nothing miraculous, marvelous, life-altering?
No.
Just typical high school stuff.
Yep. Yeah, broke up when it came time to head to college. And
yep.
all
And that was
jazz.
that. Where'd you go to school? College?
I went to a little while at Appalachian State
Okay.
in Boone, North Carolina.
How far away was that from home?
4 hours, 4.5 hours, I feel like.
So far enough that you're not coming home every night.
Yeah. Yep. Not even every month.
So we jumped over your dad's passing.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind my asking, what happened?
It was cancer. They found it in his lungs, like the week before Christmas, or sometime around there. Maybe the week before Christmas, he went in for pre-op, and they were like, "Man, it's everywhere. There's no operation that we could do. It's in your brain. It's everywhere now." And then he passed away February 13th.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, it was a hard one.
So he passed in February. So that was a short time.
Yeah.
I have a similar story of quick cancer death in my family. Do you think... Oh, maybe this is a question for later. Is it better that it's fast or that you have a lot of time?
You know, I hesitate with questions like that. It's just bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's bad if you have a lot of time to grieve.
Yeah.
And it's bad if you don't have a lot of time left with somebody. Yeah, it's probably a different experience for the one who is dying than those left in the wake.
Yeah. That's true. I haven't experienced that yet.
No. Like, yeah, if you want to talk about, oh, death, where's your sting? I get it from the perspective of somebody who is sick, a believer who is sick and who is excited about heaven and eternity and
yeah.
I get all that, but for everyone else involved in the process, it just hurts.
Yeah. So you went away to college.
Mm-hmm.
What happened in college? You said you were there for a couple of years?
1.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Again, didn't apply myself.
Oops.
I sat outside playing music
Nice.
all day long, hanging out with friends. Yeah, just a real goober.
Yeah.
I don't really have any regrets about it. Like I don't think I would still be using a degree if I had gotten one. So when I look back on it, I don't look back on it with regrets because of the ramifications of it all, but I look back on it with regret that like exercised poor character.
Mm.
You know, like things still worked out, but it's like yeah, but still that was really poor character and poor decision making, and
Yeah.
great that things worked out, but by no merit of my own.
I think that's going to be the name of my biography.
There you go.
I'm stealing that.
You have it.
Thank you. Thank you. So when you left school then, what was the plan? Did you you just dropped out or did you get kicked out?
Didn't get kicked out, but my mom, who was the one paying for the whole thing, was like, "We're done with this. Done."
Are your older siblings more studious?
Oh yeah, yeah, and my younger one is as well.
So you're the mess up.
Oh yeah, yep, for sure. But it's fine. Every family's got to have somebody like that,
Absolutely.
and in 8,000 years it won't matter anyway, so it's fine.
That's right.
I'll be that guy.
So when you left school, when mom said that's enough, did you go home or what'd you do?
I did a lot. This is honestly it's not worthy of diving into, but it was a couple of years there of self-indulgence and self-centeredness and more poor decision making, and eventually good friends of mine were moving to Nashville and decided they were going to be really kind and brought me into the fold, and I came up here with them. But that time in between leaving school and landing in Nashville was just a mess. Huge mess. And it's fine.
It sounds educational.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. And you get a chance to learn a lot of like, oh, I'm never going to do that again stuff,
Yeah.
you know? And you learn, you learn how not awesome you are. That's a great lesson for all of us to learn, you know?
Yes. So you moved to Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
What was the plan? Just tagging along with your friends?
Yeah. First off, let's get a fresh start.
Yeah.
Let's, a hard break, insert page break kind of thing.
Yeah. How old were you at this point?
21 or 22.
So legally drinking?
Not really.
No?
Yeah. That was never a thing in my younger years. Like I would have a beverage, but yeah, I could take it or leave it. I've always been a coffee guy. Like if we're going to hang, I'd probably rather get coffee with you than beers.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I moved here, started waiting tables, and
21, so that would have been the early aughts. Like 2003?
probably 02. I feel like it's probably 02.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
Where were you waiting tables?
The General Jackson. Yeah, boy.
For those that don't know, the General Jackson is a showboat.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big fake paddle boat that leaves from the parking lot of the Opry Mills Mall, formerly Opry Land, and you watch a stage show and eat dinner as the boat goes up the river to Nashville, right by 2nd Avenue and 1st Avenue, and the what all else there? There's a stage there. River Stages used to be there.
Try the Titan Stadium.
Yeah.
Turns around.
That's where it turns around, and then it goes back, and it's about an hour each way.
Maybe, yeah, I don't remember. Something like that.
So you waited tables on the General Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Look at me now.
Did you have fun doing that?
No. I still, even at that point, didn't really have a work ethic or any sort of like, they should have fired me 1,000 times over, I didn't have any sort of proper understanding. But It's interesting. I don't know how much of this has to do with my dad passing at 16, but I also wonder, like, would I have even paid attention if he had tried to teach me this kind of stuff? I don't know. But yeah, I was a horrible employee.
I'm sorry.
There's a track record here.
Yeah, see a pattern.
Yep. Oof.
So when did you? Forgive me, I don't know your wife's name.
Ruth.
Ruth. That's right. When did you meet Ruth?
When we were waiting tables together on the General Jackson.
Look at that.
Booyah.
Look at that. I didn't know that, but that was perfect timing.
And she was in college studying finance. And I said, Ruth, explain this to me. You're going into all of this debt to learn how to manage money. And she said, you know what? I was, but I'm not anymore. Thank you for that. And she quit. Glorious.
Do you wish you had changed her or not encouraged her that way now?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
All right.
I'll still stand by that. And if my kids decide to take out student loans to learn how to manage money, I will have the same conversation with them.
How did you start dating?
I mean, you know what it's like. Have you ever waited tables or worked in the food service industry? And it turns into a little love boat situation, and there's, all sorts of couples connecting.
Yeah.
And, yeah, because that's who you're around all the time.
That's right. Proximity breeds intimacy.
Yep. And so we started hanging out after work, and then we started skipping work to hang out, and it was great.
That's got to be... I'm sorry. It's a boat. It's not like you can show up late.
No, but you could call them at 3:00 in the afternoon and say, I'm not going to be there at 5.
Yeah, and they'd have somebody else come in.
Hopefully. But again, I didn't care. And poor character, not a team player.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I would convince her, hey, let's both call out tonight and go do something else. And she would, and we would.
What'd you do? What'd you go do?
Hang out.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Just at home?
Yeah. Hang out at home. We go to shows. Went to a lot of shows. Go to the park, whatever.
Who do you remember going to see at that point? Shows that made an impression.
It was really cool back then. It was the 12 at 12th, the 12th and Porter.
Yeah, 12th and Porter.
Uh-huh. And they used to have this, I don't know, maybe it was a Monday night thing.
Okay.
But 12 local artists would come together and everybody would get a couple of songs. And yeah, it was great.
That is cool.
Really good music coming out of there at that time.
So how'd you fall in love? When did you, obviously you're just spending time together, but at what point did you realize she's the girl for you?
That took a while.
Yeah.
I think when we had first started hanging out, that's obviously in the back of your mind at that age. But I'd also quit that and had started touring. And so we were on again, off again for a while there. And then eventually we were on again, and it just stayed on, and we got married.
How old were you when you got married?
I don't know.
How long? Do the math. You can do this. How long have you been married? And how old are you?
We just did 15 years.
Uh-huh. And you're 38.
You know what? I'm going to look inside. I got the date right here.
Theater of the mind. He's pulled his ring off his finger.
May 8th, 2004.
Okay. All right. So you would have been, what is that, 23?
Yeah. Yep. I'm super bad at dates and numbers and...
2004. I'm 23 years old. At what point, because you said you recorded an album. Once.
Yeah.
No. I just mean you said you were touring.
I was touring as a crew guy.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay, so you're touring as a crew guy.
Uh-huh.
Who'd you tour with?
Kind of everybody in Christian music at some point in time.
Yeah.
I was doing merchandise back then, and it started as summer festivals where you'd pack up 20 different bands in a U-Haul truck and drive across the country, setting up and tearing down. And
seeing a lot of the country, but not really seeing any of it.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, it seemed awesome.
Yeah.
the time I loved it, but it was definitely it's a young guy's game.
Did Ruth go with you?
No.
That's rough.
Yeah.
So at what point did you discover photography?
It wasn't until I was doing a European tour, and before leaving, I had sold a guitar and bought a camera, and a couple of the crew guys taught me how to shoot manual
Nice.
on the European tour, and it kind of stuck, and I did some photos, and that turned into a couple of band guys asking for endorsement photos, like, hey, such and such needs a picture of me with their instrument.
Yeah.
So I'd do that, and yeah, it just kind of snowballed and snowballed.
You say that like it's no big deal, but it's pretty dramatic.
Yeah,
mean-
and it is a big deal. And to have been able to leave the road in my 30s and transition into full-time photography, that's super rare.
Yeah.
And I was talking with Brendan about it last night, because we're having the conversation of, you guys are homeschooled and I work from home, and I'm not out shooting every single day.
Yeah.
And I was voicing my concern to him that, like, hey, we haven't modeled for you what adulthood looks like for most people, and I'm kind of concerned. So I just want to talk through these things of this chance to do a job like this in this way it's a privilege.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just work normal jobs, and that's okay. And this might be a skill set I need to learn to help you develop. Like, how do you fit into the mold? Like, I mean, I know we're Americans and we want to kick back against the mold, but the reality is, like, you got to learn how to live in society and do normal things. And if you get a chance to work for yourself or do a creative job, it is a privilege, but it is not the norm.
Right.
That's a constant conversation we've been having.
What did Ruth do once you guys were married?
She did a little personal assisting for a businesswoman.
Mm-hmm.
But she'd always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and we didn't waste too much time
Yeah?
before, starting to have kids. And
So your oldest is how old now?
11.
Okay. All right. So you had a couple of years there.
Mm-hmm.
Is your son your oldest?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How long before your daughter was born?
There's about 2 years in between each of them.
Mm-hmm.
Give or take a few months.
So you're in Nashville now. I mean, this is more or less home. You guys have been here for a long time. Was Ruth from here?
She's from the northwest corner of Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So you had your son in 2007, your daughter in 2000, your first daughter in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
How did life shift when you became a parent?
That's when everything started to change, and I finally started growing up a little bit. Like, up until we talked a lot about life up until kids, but most of life I had up until kids is really not. It's not super important to me really at all. Like, that's when I started coming alive, and life got more vibrant, and I both wanted to start growing up, and I started growing up. So I guess I was super late at blooming in this. I loved being a dad. I still love being a dad. It's like it's my favorite thing about me. Maybe it's because it has very little to do with me.
Yeah. Do you remember when you realized that?
So for me, the dad moment clicked the moment he was born.
Yeah.
I was very hands-on in the delivery process. But my change started happening knowing that my wife was growing another human being inside of her, and the lens that I saw her through just had a huge shift, and that was a very waking up moment
Yeah.
for me. Yeah, the whole thing just left me in awe of what she and her body were doing, what both of these bodies were doing. And that was my big, like, dude, you got to wake up kind of thing.
What's your son's name?
Brennan,
Brennan. And then your daughter.
Abigail.
Excellent. And then Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
What's the age difference between Abigail and Pearl?
2 or 3 years.
Okay, so there's still just one right on top, not right on top of another, but not. We're not talking 10-year span or anything.
Yeah, I think Brennan and Abby were 2 and 4 when Pearl was born.
So I'll let you totally take point on this. This is your story. It's not mine. Tell me about Pearl.
I found out whenever I was on tour that we were pregnant, and came off of the tour for the 20-week ultrasound. The tour had wrapped. 20-week ultrasound was awful. They wanted us to go ahead and terminate the pregnancy that afternoon. We did not. They had discovered a condition called Alobar, holoprosencephaly, which basically means her brain didn't split into 2 separate hemispheres, but it was one small lobe. Not compatible with life was the phrase that they threw at us at that time. Yeah, but then she was born in July and was with us for 5.5 years.
Well, that's life.
Yeah, for sure. That's what we were thinking. Even like before she was actually born, we're like, what do you mean? She's living right now. What do you mean she's not compatible with what's happening? It's happening.
So the doctors told you that you should terminate.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot imagine what that conversation is like.
Yeah, it's hard. I understand why some people say, okay, let's do that. I get it. Aside from a substantial amount of hope, I understand why people do that.
Why didn't you?
It was obvious that God was doing something, and it didn't make any sense to interrupt him while he's working. He wasn't done knitting Pearl together, so why would we just stop this process right now? He's still working. Let the guy work. Yeah, that's kind of cut and dry why we didn't play through on this and see what is he doing, you know?
Yeah.
And if she's in there fighting to thrive and fighting to grow, we're not going to go invade her space while she's putting up this fight. Let's equip her to help her fight. You know, that's what her body's trying to do. Let's help her.
She was born in July.
Mm-hmm.
And what was life like initially for you guys? How did that change everything?
We were kind of on cloud 9. We
Yeah.
were on cloud 9 and scared at the same time. Back and forth to the hospital all the time. She came home on hospice care.
Wow.
When she was born. But then it wasn't too long into that we were like, you know what? Let's get out of here. She's thriving. She's doing great. Let's respond accordingly and treat accordingly instead of comfort care. Yeah, we learned how to live this quiet, shut down life with Pearl, and didn't really get out much, didn't do a ton. We preferred it that way. Just living life with her.
Yeah.
You know, there was that tension of always expecting her to pass that was early on in her life. And so you don't want to leave to go get some bread and milk because you don't know what's going to happen while you're gone. But all that stuff started to fade away as she continued to do well.
Tell me about Brennan and Abigail's relationship with Pearl.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were incredible with her. And we didn't have to teach them to be incredible with her. They were just naturally inclined. They knew that the doctors said Pearl likely wouldn't make it to term. They knew that the doctors said she likely wouldn't make it through delivery. They knew that the doctors said she might only have a few hours of life. Like, they knew all of it.
Yeah.
We brought them in on every bit of it. And so they were keenly aware of the importance of, like, hey, there's not a lot else that matters right now. And let's do this and let's spend time with her. And they played with her in the ways that they could. And as they got older and Brennan was learning music and Abby was learning to read, their favorite pastimes were spending time with her in her bed, doing those sorts of activities.
Wow.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
Just to give people a picture of what Pearl's life was like. She couldn't see, she couldn't hear, right? Mm-hmm.
She couldn't move her body intentionally on her own.
Really?
So if she had a mosquito bite, she couldn't scratch it. Mm-hmm. If she needed to move in bed, she couldn't tell you.
Right.
Because she couldn't talk and she couldn't move it herself. She was tube fed. Early on, there was not any respiratory assistance, but then that transitioned into she needed supplemental oxygen at times. Mm-hmm. Started needing that more and more, and then that moved into needing a trach, and then toward the end of her life, she needed a trach and a ventilator and oxygen. Lots of seizures. On a bad day, she could have several hundred seizures. And I don't know what Pearlie thought of her life. I don't know if she hated it. We'll find out one day. But there were certainly times where she seemed to be very content with the cards that she'd been dealt. Especially times when everything was under control, the seizures were under control, respiratory things were good. I know that she loved time with her siblings and with her mother. Yeah, there's a lot we won't know about her take on all of it yet.
You photographed everything extensively and shared a lot of that on Instagram, and definitely make me feel like a bad dad for not photographing more. What compelled you to keep shooting as much as you did at home?
At different things at different times.
Yeah.
Compelled me to keep shooting. I started because I'd get a phone call, after a week-long visit in the ICU with her, wondering if she's going to make it or not. Somebody would call from back home randomly, like, hey, man, how are you guys? What's going on? And there was no way in a 10 or 15-minute phone call I could explain to them how we were and what was going on. And if I had taken the 10 or 15 minutes to do that, then I would desperately need them to understand what I was saying. And you can't. No matter how much I want you to understand, you can't understand after that. And so I started it as me taking responsibility for telling the truth about what's going on and what life was really like, so that I wanted to help you understand as much as I possibly could. So take you by the hand and walk you through all of it, so that when you call, you already know what's going on.
Right.
And I've already told you how we were and what's going on with her. And that was the main reason I started.
Obviously, the roller coaster of health is stressful. Other than those doctors initially, did you have other people questioning decisions you were making even after she was born?
Yeah, not so much with the doctors and not so much with our immediate community.
Mm-hmm.
The immediate community was wonderful. Her doctors were wonderful. Our friends and our church, wonderful.
Right. Good.
And it's way worse now than it was back then. But you know how our culture just loves to like chime in and drop some shame on somebody. There was a good bit of that coming from the internet.
Really?
Thank God it wasn't 2019, because it is way more severe now. But yeah, you can do a quick Google search of Pearl Joy Brown and you can read some awful stuff that people wrote. You can read a lot of really, really great stuff that people wrote too. But for sure, there were people that got upset. If I'm going to paint with a broad brush, I will tell you that folks on the left got really upset that we didn't terminate the pregnancy. And they felt they wanted to chime in on stuff because I had shared stuff. And then folks on the right were upset that she was on TennCare, and they wanted to chime in because I had spoken up. And though our immediate church community was absolutely fantastic, the church at large got upset that I had said that God had designed Pearl this way.
Capital C Church?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That I had said he had done this intentionally, that this didn't happen to Pearl, but that he purposefully designed her. Because if you're going to say that about healthy kids, then you got to say that about unhealthy kids also. Because what's more dehumanizing, that or taking the perspective that, like, God started working on your kid and then stepped outside for a smoke break.
Right.
And things went weird.
Yeah.
Like, he cares. He doesn't step outside like that. He's there for all of it. And it's all intentional. And that makes people mad. So be it.
Did Ruth read any of these articles online?
Oh, yeah. We both read them at first. And at first they hurt, and then it just got comical.
Yeah.
Because, we're hanging out at our house. We got a half a dozen friends over there visiting Pearl and hanging out with us. And we're having a good time doing feeding tube stuff and medications and pulse ox. And then you want to read what some blogger, either in this country or abroad, who's like decided they're super angry about you right now. And so you'd read these ridiculous things and it's like, man, you're really mad and we really don't care.
Yeah.
We're over here kind of doing our thing. And if you want to be mad with your life, go ahead and go be mad with your life. But you're going to miss it. And yeah, they did. Eventually all that stuff died down. You know how all this...
Yeah.
People get mad for 48 hours and then decide to get mad about something else.
How did having Pearl around change the way you work and think about work?
She taught me the importance of being weak. And so I've chosen weakness in my professional realm.
Hmm.
And in a lot of ways that hurts me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that don't want anything to do with weakness. And I get it. Like, it's certainly not a professional asset.
Right.
But those remaining people that get it, they get it. And I'm still working. And that's enough work for me.
So when you say weakness, what do you mean?
Not trying to dominate anything. Not trying to shuck and jive. It's more about abiding in whatever it is that God is aiming to do with your life. And I think with me, he is not concerned with trying to make me into any next greatest anything, really. But just living quietly and doing the work that he assigns, doing it well. But yeah, not trying to dominate anything. Not trying to hustle anything or like grab life by the horns and wrestle it to the ground. I'm not that guy. And it's fine. So that means I don't get all the work, but there's enough work there.
Yeah.
Plenty of work, you
Yeah.
know? More
Yeah.
than enough. And I think I learned all that, but because watching what he was able to do with Pearlie's life without her doing a doggone thing. Like, she did nothing
Yeah.
and somehow did more than I'll ever do without trying. She just abided.
It's an interesting point. That somebody who literally was incapable of doing anything did so much. She had no problem yielding.
Yep.
This is not supposed to be a spiritual podcast, but
I thought about that, but I was like, if
I
can't be honest or sincere with any of it.
no, it's your
without-
story. I'm not supposed to be doing it. You talk about whatever you want.
I know it ostracizes people at times, but
It's not there. The point is to share your lived experience, and that's your lived experience.
the point and theme of her life and my life, it doesn't have a lot of purpose outside the spiritual realm. Especially for her, it almost takes a spiritual lens to actually see the value. Because it's super easy to walk by and be like, oh, that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a whole different lens to be stopped in your tracks and, whoa, what is God doing right here? I have not seen him do anything like this before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can tell me no. Mm-hmm. How did Pearl die?
We turned off her ventilator.
How did Brennan and Abigail deal with that?
It's hard. They were crushed.
Yeah.
It's the worst kind of grief you can imagine. And they were appropriately crushed by it. And it's not something that resolves anytime soon. It was too much for these young kids to be a part of. But after they had been a part of everything else, you had to play through. You had to be a part of this too. But it was too much. Their senses took in too much on that day. I mean, all of ours did. You're not born with the skill set to watch that happen with your daughter. You're not born with the skill set to have had an active role in that happening. You're not born with the skill set to help your wife or your other kids process it. It's just hard.
She was born in July, and you said she was 5.5. That means it was sometime around Christmas again?
It's March 29th, 2018. We just rounded the 1 year anniversary.
How was that?
Super hard. Way harder than I thought it would be. All the grief stuff's way harder than I thought it would be. I guess I assumed, since we had already spent 5.5 years, I mean really 6 years if you want to include the pregnancy, we had spent 6 years already in grief and expecting different times. We were expecting at any moment for things to happen. I just assumed we already knew how to do this. You don't. Yeah, at least for us, there was no other option other than to be crushed.
Yeah.
And we were.
How long were you able to, as a small business owner, how long were you able to go to focus on family and grief and not have to work?
I mean, I was back to work within a few weeks because work was helpful.
Yeah.
Not in like I needed to be distracted from it, because even at work, I was only thinking about her and the family. But just to put my body in a different room and breathe a different air around different people and do something different with my hands, like all of that was helpful. Yeah, that's still the case.
Yeah. So what's next? What happened after that? It's still working. Family's getting used to a new normal.
Yeah. It stayed dark for a good year. But I feel like over the last few months, the lights have been coming back on.
Is there something you did, or someone you talked to, something you read?
No, again, I'm going to go spiritual on you. I think God just decided enough of the anger and the bitterness and the confusion. Enough of the eating and drinking everything in sight. Enough holding up. Enough just, yeah. I just felt like he just grabbed me and was like, man, wake up. Come on. And it wasn't like a wake up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It was, hey, wake up. I'm still carrying you. Which that makes it a lot easier to wake up than the wake up and get to work on yourself. Yeah, so I mean, it's so cliche, but it's just one day at a time at this point.
Yeah.
We don't have 5-year plans we're working on. Don't really care to. But yeah, we're still grieving. If I'm honest, I hope I always am. But just finding a healthier way to do it, you know?
You know, the kids still homeschooling?
Yeah. Yep. And we're going to keep doing that as long as it makes sense. We try to keep our finger on the pulse of all of it to make sure we're all still doing well.
Right.
But yeah, we like it.
Yeah.
Them schooling from home and me working from home means we hang out a lot. It's super great.
Yeah. Yep. Having done the same thing.
Yeah. We can frequently be found playing pool at 11 a.m. on a weekday. And that is awesome. It's great.
Are you sure you grew up?
Kind of.
Yeah. It's okay. We're artists, so it's always a question.
Yep.
So ask 3 questions at the end.
Okay.
Same 3 questions. Totally open-ended. It's just looking for common threads.
Okay.
What scares you?
This is dumb, but I think myself. I'm scared of myself and my own voice.
Okay.
It's my own voice that is my biggest hindrance.
Your literal voice or the things you might say?
The things I say to myself.
Oh.
Yeah, and that scares me a lot. Where I want myself to stop talking to me because it's the most convincing voice and frequently the most dishonest voice. And so I hate it when I feel it getting louder. That like, oh no, I'm about to buy the lie again. I'm about to convince myself again. It's going to crush me again. I'm better at waging war on that than I was 3 years ago, but it's a constant battle.
Yeah. What do you regret?
Oh, man. Most of it?
There's an honest answer.
Most of everything? Yeah, I don't understand those people that are like, man, I got no regrets. I don't get it. Maybe you've had some people say that on your podcast. And you might have more coming through your podcast that are going to say that.
Yeah, eventually.
I mean, kudos to them, but no, man. Even every day, I put my head on my pillow at night, and it doesn't take long at all before I start regretting something from that particular day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got tons of regrets. Do I think that most of that stuff will matter long-term, big picture? A lot of it won't. Some of it will. So the regrets aren't all deep and like gut-wrenching regrets.
Right.
Some of them are.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them, it's, yeah. Yeah, good Lord, I was a bonehead in that moment. What was I thinking? I surely regret that. Yeah, I got a lot of regrets. That's not a specific answer to your question, but we'd be here for weeks.
That's all right. That's okay. It's an open-ended question. That's the whole point. Who is God?
He's my Father. He is love. He's patience. He is kind. Compassionate. Slow to anger. Yeah. I'll leave it at that.
That's good.
So I don't go on for 30 more minutes.
Eric, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, man.
That's it. That's all there is to it.
You got a lot here to cut and paste and delete.
Guys, you need to go see Eric's work. Not just of Pearl Joy, though that's absolutely a good reason to go see his work, but because he's an excellent photographer. His primary photography website is ericbrownphoto.com. You can also see his event work at ericbrownevents.com, or you can see disproportionatejoy.com, the site completely dedicated to Pearl Joy. Also, follow him on Instagram. ebrown_photo is his handle. That's instagram.com/ebrown_photo. He's an excellent photographer. Send him some business. If you'd like to see the portraits I made of Eric, you can see them on our website, www.butenoughAbout.me, or on our Instagram page, instagram.com/butenoughAboutMePodcast or facebook.com/butenoughAboutMePodcast. If you've got feedback, want to drop us a line, let us know what you think of what we're doing, tell us how this story or one of the others has affected you, please email me, tyler@butenoughAbout.me, or you can just hop on the website and drop us a line through there. If you know of someone whose story we should be sharing, that's how this connection got made, and I'm so glad it did. Our logo was created by Mr. Casey Jones. You can see more of his work at iamcaseyjones.com. All of the music comes to us care of Mr. Jace Hackman. Jase Hackman.com is his website. Guys, you got an assignment. Sometime in the next 2 weeks, before we drop another episode, I want you to go find somebody and ask them to tell you their story. I love you guys, and I am so glad that you are letting me do this. Thank you for coming along on this ride. My name is Tyler Andrews, but enough about me.